It's a pleasure to have everybody joining. Thanks so much. I know that we're all involved in fundraising in one way or another. So we all know the importance of the ask. If you're not asking for gifts, planned gifts or other, then you're not getting gifts. I want to start with the story of my very first ask, which was in 7th grade when I had a terrific crush on Lisa Maggio. And I chose to ask Lisa to go study at our 7th grade dance. We were all there in the gymnasium with that high gloss varnish on the floor, poisoning everybody. I had on my powder blue leisure suit with the contrasting thread on the lapels. My shirt was a fine Kiana polyester. My shoes, blue plastic from Buster Brown. So if there had been a fire, I wouldn't have burned. I would just smoke and melt. I saved my last dance for Lisa. Lisa saved her last dance for Albert Moran. So I had the pain of watching that spectacle. When it was over, I went up to Lisa in the middle of the dance floor, and I got so close to her that I put my hands on her shoulders, and I asked her, "Lisa, would you go steady with me?" With all her 7th grade charm and sweetness, she said, "You are standing on my dress." Years later, Albert and Lisa married. And then sadly, they separated and divorced. I'm an attorney, and I handled that divorce. I handled it for Albert, and Lisa has been paying the price ever since. Again, I want to welcome everyone. I want to thank Keela Labs so much for hosting. Thank you for your help, Kimberly. Thank you for your help, Stephanie, today. And a special, again, thanks to our host, Keela Labs. I don't recommend the vindictive school of fundraising that my very first Ask story suggested. That's not a good way of raising money. And I do promise you that my asks have gotten much, much better since 7th grade. I'm going to get my screen shared and we'll kick off. Here we are in Planned Giving 101. And this is what we're going to talk about. The what and why of planned giving, who your best prospects are, how you get started. That's key, how to get started. A lot of lessons there, a lot of misconceptions around getting started. I've got some marketing tips for you, a continuing ed if you want to learn even more about planned giving, and the all-important Q&A, as Kimberly urged you, as I beseech you, please give us your questions, because that puts the focus on what's on your mind. So please feed your questions in the chat or the Q&A, and we will get to them. So what is planned giving and why is it important? Okay, very simple definition of planned giving. This is charitable gifts that a donor makes that are long-term gifts in their retirement plan or might be their estate plan. And when people are thinking about a planned gift, much more personal factors go into their consideration of whether to make a gift, because they're deciding whether to include your important work alongside for a female donor, alongside their husband, wife, if it's a guy, children, grandchildren, partner. Alongside those important people in their lives, there's a gift for your nonprofit. So very personal factors go into whether to make a planned gift to your nonprofit. And for today, what we're going to cover today, it's a gift to your nonprofit at the donor's death. So you can see this is long-term giving, because the donor has to die before there's a gift of cash to your nonprofit. And some why? Sustainability. It's the all-important continuation of your work, your mission, your values for decades and generations to come. These are long-term gifts that help ensure the sustainability of your work for those decades and generations. Also, endowment. If you have zero endowment, don't get discouraged. Everybody had a zero endowment at some point. You have to get started somewhere. You can start with now with planned giving. And if you're growing your endowment, planned giving is ideal. And as we talk through, you'll see why the planned gifts that come can be ideal for launching your endowment or growing. Here's what planned giving is not. The tax character of property acquired by a person from the estate of a decedent whose executor opted out of the estate tax regime is the same as it was in the hands of the decedent. We don't care about that. That's from the US Internal Revenue Code. I'm sure the Canadian Code has lots of provisions that are similar. We don't care. We don't care. This is what we are not talking about today. Anything related to anything like that, or anything that could be a corollary to that, or anything even remotely related, this is not the planned giving that I'm recommending for you. Let's start with who your best prospects are for these planned gifts that we're going to be talking about. These are folks who love your work. And we know they love your work because they are your consistent, loyal donors. They're giving to you year after year, many of them multiple gifts in a year. And they've been doing this for a long time. And they're roughly 55 to 60 and over. I choose that age because that's about the time where folks start thinking about their estate plan as a method for giving back to the causes that have been important to them. Yes, there are folks who have wills and things who are much younger, but when you're getting started, I want you to focus on the low-hanging fruit, the easiest prospects to work with, the most likely gifts. And those are the folks that are your consistent loyal donors, and they're about 55 to 60 and over, okay? Because again, that's the age we start thinking about our estate plan as a way to give back to those causes that we love. You certainly want to be aware of women's role in philanthropy because women outlive men. So don't make the mistake of ignoring women. I've seen it sometimes at events and things. And, you want to be very cognizant of the role of women, especially related to planned giving, because of their likelihood to outlive men. And as in any new initiative, right, you're going to look to your board for leadership in your new planned giving program. You want your board to be including your work in their wills. I've got two mandatory takeaways. I think this is pretty clear, right? That's not too subtle, is it? That's coming across pretty clearly, right? When I talked about consistent loyal donors, notice I didn't say anything at all about the size of those gifts that these folks have been giving for years, decades, multiple decades, some folks, depending, of course, how long your organization has been around. But for your organizations, if you've been around 30, 40 years, you've got people who have been giving to you for 20, 25, 30 years, right? Maybe even longer. I didn't say anything about the size of those gifts. This is not only for your wealthy major donors. No, you're going to make an enormous mistake. You're going to leave a lot of money on the table if you think that planned giving is only for your wealthy donors. Folks of very modest means, where those decades of gifts have been small gifts, those folks are great prospects for a planned gift because they're planning for you year after year after year. So, not too subtle. Please take this away. It's not only for your wealthy donors. Where do I suggest you get started? Charitable bequests. We're talking about simple gifts in people's wills. That's what a charitable bequest is, a charitable gift in someone's will. The keen-eyed among you may have noticed that if you take the first letter of each bullet there, I spelled out the name of our host, Keela Labs. See that? Very, that's That's maybe you could say that's an attorney's sense of humor, but hopefully it's already better than that. There's been a little more levity than Keela Labs spelled out in bullet points. But so some of these might be a little awkwardly worded, but I got to get the K in and the B and everything. So, but all the points will be made very clearly. All right. So some things about charitable bequests. Again, gifts by will, the place to start your planned giving program. Why is that? These will explain that and explain some things about charitable bequests. First thing you want to know is you might not be told about the gift. In the US, for every gift that you're told about in a will, there's another 7 to 8 that you don't know about. Because for some folks, it's just so personal and so private that they're never going to tell you. No matter how many times you ask them to check a box that says that they've included you in their will, they're just not going to check that box. It's just too private and personal to them. And I'm guessing, this is not US unique. I'm sure it's the same in Canada. For some folks, for the majority of folks, right? For every one, there's another 7 to 8 who just are never going to tell you that they've done it. So you might not be told, even though you give folks a lot of opportunity to let you know, because you want to thank them, of course. By far, this is the most popular planned gift. Canada or US, name the biggest charities you can think of. I assure you, the vast majority of their planned gifts are these simple gifts by will. At least 75%, 75 to 90% on the high end of all the planned gifts in the biggest programs, the billion-dollar endowments you can think of, are simple gifts by will. These are the most popular planned gift by far. Why is that? Well, they're easy. Everybody knows what a will is. Everybody knows they need one. And everybody knows how wills work. It's so easy for your donors and for you. And we'll get to that in the second we get down to these couple more bullet points. Expect cash 99% of the time. I'm saying this because I don't want folks to be put off thinking, oh, we're going to be given something in a will. We're not going to know what to do with it. It's going to be complex real estate or some bizarre thing, and we're not going to know what to do. No. I've been doing planned giving, as Kimberly said, over 25 years. Last year was my silver anniversary. I started in 1997. And I assure you, down here in the US or up in North, the vast majority of gifts are just simple gifts of cash. Don't let someone who doesn't understand charitable bequests tell you that you can't do planned giving because you're going to get bizarre gifts that you don't know what to do with, and we're going to need a lawyer and blah, 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 spinning, down into a wormhole you don't need to be in. Simple gifts by cash, 99% of the time. Very easy to deal with. Look back at the giving history, you'd be amazed. A lot of times, when you get a gift from someone, one of those 7 to 8, who will never tell you, a gift comes in their will, you look back at the person's giving history and you just see this astonishing trail of maybe they're large gifts or maybe they're very small gifts, but it's just so many gifts over so many years. It's amazing. Those are the folks, I'm in that scenario, I was portraying somebody who never did tell you. But when you go back and query your database for your planned giving prospects, looking for those loyal, consistent donors, you're going to see over decades how many loyal donors you have, and they're your great prospects. Always respect those small lifetime donors. Well, that flows from exactly what I just said. Your small lifetime donors over many years, they are your best planned giving prospects, right? And when I say small donors, small gifts, some people prefer modest. If you prefer modest giving instead of small giving, that's fine. I'm not commenting on people's character. They're not small people. They just make small gifts. I call it as is. I see them as small. Whatever adjective you want to use, the folks you're looking for. And you want to be good to those small donors because they are your very good planned giving prospects. Best because this is so easy for your donors. Yeah, as I said, everybody knows what wills are. Everybody knows they need one, and everybody knows how wills work. So what does that mean? That means you don't have to educate your donors. You don't have to spend precious marketing resources explaining gifts of life insurance or charitable remainder unit trust with net makeup income provisions or something. And you know what else? You don't have to educate your staff about all those other types of planned gifts, which I'm going to breeze through very shortly. Breeze, trust me. You don't have to educate your donors. You don't have to educate your staff. We're talking about simple gifts by will. This is the way to launch your planned giving program because it is so simple. And so for that reason, I want you to understand subtle mandatory takeaway number 2. I'm not even happy just saying takeaway, mandatory. Subtle takeaway number 2. You can have a very respectable planned giving program and never promote anything other than simple gifts by will. When your planned giving program is 20 years old, you can still be promoting planned gifts that are gifts in people's wills, and that's all you've ever promoted for all those 20 years. Because you're going to capture at least 75% of the gifts that you would have gotten anyway if you had gone further. So you can go further. As I said, we're going to breeze through some other gifts, but you never, ever have to go beyond simple gifts by will. Don't need to. That's the last of the mandatory takeaways. It's only 2 of them. So if you decide to go further, I probably should put that if in big red like I did the mandatory takeaways. If you decide to go further. Okay, there's these things called living trusts. They operate kind of like wills. You could be a remainder beneficiary of a living trust. IRA rollover, that's for folks in the States, for your donors who are 70 and a half and over. It's technically called a qualified charitable distribution. Financial asset beneficiary, any asset, like life insurance I mentioned, sometimes checking savings accounts, brokerage accounts, they sometimes have death beneficiary clauses, and you could be a death beneficiary of one of those. I'm telling you, we're breezing through because these are not the places to start. Don't start your planned giving here. Start it with bequests. But if you decide to go further, a little breezing through since it is planned giving 101, charitable gift annuities, in the US, heavily regulated. They pay income for life to donors, and then at the death of the donor, what remains is a gift to your nonprofit. Charitable remainder trusts operate very similar to gift annuities, income for life. What remains is a gift to your nonprofit. Retained life estate, that's a real estate method of giving real property, real estate. And charitable lead trusts, very rare because the donor is sacrificing income. They're giving income to your nonprofit, and then at their death or after a number of years, the asset goes back to the donor or to their family. But they're rare because very few people can afford to sacrifice income. So they're only done by very wealthy folks. Okay, there's a breathe through. That was a big if. If you decide to go further, which you never have to do, as you know from mandatory takeaway number 2, in all its subtlety. But if you decide to, there's a couple of gift options that are valuable. I mean, those other things are valuable, but they're not the place to start. And you don't ever have to go into them if you don't want to. So here's where we are so far. The what and why of planned giving, check. Who the best prospects are for your planned gifts, check. And how to get started. We got that. Still to come, I've got some marketing tips for you. Continuing ed if you want to learn more, and then the all-important Q&A. I hope you are putting your questions in the chat. I see in the little taskbar there, I see 15 chats and a Q&A. I hope those are not all like we can't hear Tony, or why is the audio dropping out or something. So please give us your questions. They're critical. I want to talk about what is interesting to you about launching your planned giving. So some marketing tips for you. We're keeping this simple and low cost because there's too many barriers to planned giving. Too many people think it's expensive and we have to offer all kinds of different gift opportunities, gift vehicles, which I think we've debunked that myth sufficiently. That it's too hard, it's too technical. We need an attorney. I may be the only attorney to tell you, you don't need an attorney. Okay. As I think I've made pretty clear, we're keeping this simple for your donors and for your staff. Okay, so we're keeping the marketing equally simple. So some events for events. If you're doing a sidebar, sorry, if you're doing a program, you've got a printed program or digital program, if you could drop a little sidebar in. I'm a big fan of sidebars, not articles, not 250, 300 word articles. Sidebars, 30 words, 40 words at the most. It's so easy for you. I'm not going to be counting the words, but I'm like dictating for you. It's so easy for you to include us in your will. Here's basic information that you need. And I would say that's your tax ID number, whether that's in the US or in Canada, that federal ID number, your legal name that you're incorporated under, legal name, and your address. So tax ID, legal name, and address. 3 things people can drop you in their will. Hopefully they'll tell you, but they don't have to. They can go off and do it on their own. So it's so easy for you to include us in your will. Here's the 3 things you need. And of course, you want a little contact person. But that person is not going to be answering hard questions about how to make a will. No, they're going to be talking about the sustainability of your work. That's what the conversation is going to be about, and how important a gift like this, a gift in someone's will, is for your nonprofit, for your sustainability, and for your endowment. That's what they're going to be talking about. And then print. Okay, so print. So again, sidebars, articles, wherever you can squeeze a sidebar in, do that. Don't feel constrained to write, like I said, a 250 word article. Not necessary. Sidebars, wherever you can get them in. Your annual report, whether it's digital or print. If you're recognizing your other donors, you certainly should be recognizing your planned giving donors and inviting others to join those folks, right? If your other donors deserve that recognition in your annual report, certainly your planned giving donors do too. Digital, again, sidebar, or if you feel you need to do an article, go ahead, but I don't think they're necessary. Just a sidebar about how simple it is. And of course, you repurpose these sidebars from your event program and into your e-newsletter, etc. Simple page on the website. Yes, please keep it simple. Don't buy into these companies that for $750 a quarter, they'll sell you a planned giving encyclopedia with 1,000 pages about charitable lead annuity trusts. You don't need that. Simple. Gifts in wills, how simple it is. Maybe a pull quote from a donor or two and a contact person. Simple page on your website. And that's, notice I say page, 1, 2 at the most, but 1 page will definitely do it. And email signature, you could drop that line in your email signature. Everybody could. How easy it is to include us in your will. Direct mail. Now, I'm not talking about direct mail devoted to planned giving, because that's expensive. But direct mail that you're already doing, other purpose packages that you've got going out, campaigns you've got going out, drop a buck slip in that package. Buck slip, to me, that buck slip, I mean 1/3 of a page. So they're printed 3 on a page, cut, it drops 1/3 of a page into your envelope for that other purpose mailing. No change in postage, 1/3 of a page. It's not going to increase your postage cost. And you repurpose that sidebar from all those other places where you put it and just print it, drop it in. Easy. Use your reply envelope flaps for self-select and checkoff. What I mean there is, next time you print a batch of envelopes, you get, depending on your size, you might get 10,000 envelopes at a time, or you might get only 1,500 envelopes. You print envelopes on the back flap of the reply envelopes, the envelopes that folks are going to be using to send back to you. You put a little check off on that back flap. Send me info on including your organization name in my will. Boom, they check it off. They see it as they're sealing the envelope to send it back to you. Boom. So this is where we've been. All right. I've got a continuing ed slide for those who would like to learn more about planned giving, and then the Q&A. I hope your Q's are in there, because I'm going to have some A's. Oh yes, that's right. I did want to admonish you first. Maybe this one's too subtle because I didn't do it red with the reflection. Keela's going to send you a survey. Please fill it out. It's important. I want to see every single word you say. Please, it helps me. It certainly helps Keela. please fill out your survey. Forgot, I was going to urge you to do that. Now the continuing education. A book. For people who like to read books, there's a very good one. It's very simple, called Planned Giving Simplified, published by someone who I did my early planned giving learning from, Robert Sharp Sr., no longer living, but certainly a planned giving expert for decades. That's a very good book, and it keeps planned giving simple. I have a free how-to guide called Unleash the Game-Changing Power of Planned Giving at Your Nonprofit. You can go to, it's a download PDF, a little more detail about launching planned giving at your nonprofit. Just go to tony.ma/guide, or you can scan the code, the QR right there. Do that right now if you like, and it'll take you to the page to get that download. And finally, if you really want to deep dive, if you want to learn more from me, I have a course called Planned Giving Accelerator. The next class is going to start in early March, and will be done by Memorial Day in the US, which is May 31st. So it's 3 months, March to May, beginning of March to end of May. And you'll not only be learning from me, but your peers. And this will be class number 5 that I've done. In those first 4 classes, the peer learning and peer support, because folks get to know each other, because we meet once a week for an hour each week. And people start to open up and share difficult, prospect stories. Maybe it's a board member. The peer learning is just incredible. And then I've become like a footnote to the peer learning. No, but I'm teaching you week after week, and you're learning from the folks who are with you in the class too. No homework. You don't, I don't say, okay, by next week's course, next week's meeting, sorry, I do them all as meetings too, not webinars, as meetings, so we can all crosstalk. By next week's meeting, you got to have this done. It doesn't work like that. There's no homework. Most of the people that have been in the previous classes are just learning for the future, so they're not executing as we're going. So there's not homework week after week. It's not like that. The outcomes have been incredible. The Small Humane Society, they've got over $4.2 million in gift commitments. A Small Humane Society in a little town in Georgia, over $4 million. Someone else had briefed the board the way I trained the class, and she had 5 new board gifts came from her board briefing. Another a social service organization in Oregon, $2 million in commitment. So the outcomes are very, very good. People are learning and people are executing, and it's working. I've got 50% off through January 31st. You can get that discount if you go to right there, plannedgivingaccelerator.com. That's my Planned Giving Accelerator course. That's the continuing ed. I'm going to stop the share. So if there's anything, well, you're going to get the slides in case you didn't get the scan, or if there's anything you want, I'm going to stop sharing, and I know Keitha's going to send you the slides. So let's go to the Q&A, all important.
The first question that came in was, how do you age your donors, whether they're male, female, non-binary? We're assuming that you would ask. And if you ask, how do you ask? Is that through a survey, a call, a note?
Okay. Don't be, yeah. The age of 55 to 60, that's if you have age in your CRM database. Look, if you don't have it, just use the giving history as a proxy, because folks who have been giving to you for 20 years or so, or they're probably older. They got to have at least 20 years with your nonprofit, and people don't usually start giving until they're at least 25 or so, roughly. So, just use giving history as a proxy. Don't let not having age in your CRM hold you back. And who was that from? Oh, Kim, tell me who. I like to shout out.
That one was from an anonymous attendee. I'll read out the names as they come
okay.
out.
Anonymous. We don't take. I'm sorry, we don't take anonymous questions. No, I don't answer questions from anonymous. No more. No, I'm kidding. Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead. Who's next?
We did have a question from, I hope I'm saying this right, Karen. She's wondering if you could speak about DOI, or Declaration of Intent.
Declaration of Intent. I guess, Karen, you mean like a simple form for your nonprofit to give somebody to fill out? Yeah, you can do that if you want to. Karen is talking about a simple form that says, here's my intention, that I have the organization in my will, and if they want to share the dollar amount, they could do that. You could do that. You don't have to, Karen. It's non-binding. It's certainly legally, it's not binding, and the forms usually say that. If someone in your organization feels strongly that they want some kind of written documentation, then you could do that. It's not necessary, but you could.
Perfect. We had another question from Mark. If you're just starting a plan giving program, do you recommend a public launch date or event, or is it better to just start doing the things you've described?
Yeah, Mark, just start doing the things I've described. So today's Tuesday. Take a day or two, think about it. You'll get the follow-up, you'll get the slides, maybe watch the video one more time. If you can sit through that, I hope you can. Maybe start having conversations next Monday. Start opening the door, or query your CRM next Monday, and then look through it for a couple days, and maybe middle of next week, start opening doors to conversations with some of those top prospects. So you don't need any official, fancy, formal launch now. Just start opening doors with top prospects.
Love that. Just get started.
Yes, yes.
Question from Diana. How do you recommend we respond when donors tell us that they have included us in their will?
Effusive thank you. Donna, if you're with the person, give them a big handshake or a hug. If you're on the phone, enormous thanks. Because Donna, remember what I said, what they've done. They've put you alongside their husband, wife, partner, children, or grandchildren in their will. And sometimes dear friends, maybe dear friends sometimes get their way in because they're so close to our hearts that they're in our wills also. That's an enormous big step that person has taken for your nonprofit. So effusive thanks, and then a recognition society. I like to see nonprofits have recognition societies, just like you do for your donors at different dollar levels, right? You want to do the same thing for your plan giving donors, have a recognition society to welcome them to.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a question from Divi. She said, my biggest issue is how to approach donors without coming off as rude. Wills are touchy, as you've mentioned, and how do you recommend asking without stepping on the donor's dress per se? And we had a lot of people in the chat who are also asking this, just how do you start the conversation?
And who's that from? Donna?
That was from, I think it's either Divi or Divi. I'm so sorry.
Oh, Divi.
I'm getting that right.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for the call back to the Lisa Maggio story, stepping on the dress. I appreciate that. Thank you. Without stepping on their dress. This is, when you're talking to the right folks, your loyal, committed donors who are roughly 55 to 60 and over. And as I said, if you don't have age, use the giving history as a proxy. Then this becomes a natural extension of the giving that they've already been doing for your nonprofit. These folks are ready to have this kind of conversation. You're not talking about their death. You're talking about the life of your nonprofit, the sustainability of your nonprofit. It's not a conversation about the donor's death. How do you open the door? We're focusing on long-term gifts now, and you've been such a loyal supporter for so many years. We're asking folks to consider including, insert your nonprofit name, in their will. Is that something you would consider doing? And there's your entry. Now, is that the first sentence in a phone conversation? No, of course not. No, but when you're talking to those loyal, committed donors, it's not hard to get the conversation in that direction. And then you just ask if that's something that they would consider doing.
Yeah, I love that, tying in the personal connection that you have to it, because this is something we can all probably have our own approach on and all relate to in some way.
And you're right, Kimberly, and use what you have in common. What you have in common is your mission. They love it because they've been giving it to it for so many years. And hopefully you love it because you're fundraising for it. So that's what you have in common. Use that as you probably do in most of your donor meetings, right? It's just that you're extending their giving. You're giving them an option for another natural step in their progression as a donor.
Absolutely. We had from an anonymous attendee, we'll call them James Bond or something. If a donor does have legal or technical questions, what would the charity suggest?
Anything technical, legal about a will or anything else, that's when you refer them to their own attorney or their own financial advisor. That's why I'm trying to protect you from getting into conversations about how to write a will or whether it should be what's different types of bequests. That's a conversation between the donor and their legal advisor, their attorney. You want to talk about the sustainability of your work. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Kimberly, I cut you off.
No, I was gonna say, yeah, and coming from you, it means a lot as someone who works in plan giving and as a lawyer. So we want to make
Yeah,
sure
the
that
only
people are
lawyer who will tell you
protected.
you don't need a lawyer. Yeah. Your donor needs a lawyer. Your donor needs a lawyer, but you don't need a lawyer to start your plan giving. No.
Yeah.
You can start next week. You can start next Monday or Tuesday.
We have a question from Nicole. I work for an NPO with a very international community. I find it difficult to approach people from different corners of the globe because it's not a typical question that they would receive in their culture. Looking for ideas and recommendations for how to ask different kinds of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Nicole, that's true. In other parts of the world, Asia in particular, it can be very hard to have these conversations for an outsider to bring them up. Yeah, advice. I just know that there are sensitivities around this around the globe. I don't have specific advice about different continents or countries. I'm happy to be aware of the sensitivities in Asia, specifically in India, but other Asian countries too. So you're smart, of course, Nicole. You're smart to be culturally sensitive and aware. I guess my advice would be if you can limit it to folks in North America, that's where my experience is. North America. Yeah, I'm sorry I can't be more helpful that way.
No, absolutely, it's a fair answer. And Nicole, I think Tony's right. The fact that you're sensitive to it is already a very, very great start.
Yeah.
We have a few more questions. I know we're close on time, so I'm just gonna try and get through them and then we can wrap up. From Ian Pierre, do you think that sending out surveys to longstanding donors in which you ask their level of interest regarding estate gifts is an effective fundraising method?
Yeah, surveys can be useful. I've seen folks do that. It sounds like did you say his name is Ian? Sounds like Ian. It sounds like you're suggesting maybe the whole survey doesn't need to be about gifts by will, which I would suggest it shouldn't. But you might pepper one or two questions. Lots of our supporters, or we're now focusing on this area. Is a gift by will something you would consider? Drop a couple questions in about that. Yeah, I've seen surveys be successful. Sure.
Wonderful. Karen asked, back to the question on DOI, is this a good marketing tactic and what's the best way to start if it is?
A declaration of intent being a
Yes,
good marketing tactic? No. The sustainability of your work is your marketing. The longevity of your mission and your values and the work that your nonprofit is doing. Now, the declaration of intent is, first of all, as I said, it's optional, and that comes after someone has said that they have made a commitment to you. So, no, I wouldn't lead with that in your marketing. No.
All right, I'm going to just get through two more questions. And if we didn't get to your questions today, I'm so sorry. We will pass along Tony's information if you would like to reach out to him directly.
Sure.
Second last question from Colby. We are a startup 501c3, a farm. Any advice on how to get early commitments?
A startup, Colby, I would say this was valuable for you, so you know what to do for the future. Because for a startup nonprofit, donors are going to be concerned that your nonprofit is not going to live longer than them. So I like to see at least 5 years of history. So I'm glad you're with us, Colby, because now you know in advance, what plan giving is going to look like when you get to that 5-year mark. But at a startup, you have higher priorities, I think, than long-term fundraising, which I totally understand. It's just the nature of it. But yeah, you don't want to be out of the gate in your nonprofit's organizational history talking about planned giving, because as I said, folks want to know that you're going to live longer than they are. Your nonprofit is.
Yeah,
Good question. I'm glad
absolutely.
you asked that, Colby. Thank you.
It's a very, very good question. We had a question on how do you approach planned giving if you don't have long-term recurring donors?
Well, you do need individual donors, first of all, so if you're strictly fee for service or, grants funded, then planned giving isn't going to work for you. You need to have individual donors. If you don't have any long-term donors at all, nobody's been giving to you for a long time, then maybe your organization is too young for planned giving. Like I was saying to Colby, I like to see at least 5 years. And if you don't have any long-term donors, then I don't know, is there some other proxy for their commitment to you? Maybe volunteers, maybe you have long-term volunteers, but not long-term donors. That's a possibility. I mean, those folks are giving their time. Time is a considerably valuable resource. So maybe that's a possibility if you have long-term volunteers.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so sorry. I know that we are a few minutes over. I want to thank everyone for asking all of these really, really great questions. Like I said, we're going to pass along a follow-up email that will have the slide deck recording, and we're going to link some of the resources that Tony mentioned. I believe, Tony, there was a comment that one of the links wasn't working for the planned giving guide. So I'll make sure that all of those are linked in the emails so that you can get all the materials and contents that were provided today. And thank you again so much, Tony, for bringing such amazing insights and best practices for today. I think I can speak for us all that it was very, very inspiring, especially looking at how engaged the audience was. Thank you guys so much for asking all the questions. We really appreciate it. And please don't hesitate to reach out to Tony with some of the questions that we weren't able to get to. He's great to talk to. And as you can see, very, very great to answer your questions.
Be happy to.
Before we
Thank you.
go, I just want to let everyone know that there will be a short survey that Tony mentioned that's going to pop up right after this session. It's only going to take you about 20 seconds. We would greatly appreciate hearing your feedback on the session, so we hope you will all fill that out. We also have our next webinar coming up on January 24th, once again at 10 a.m. PST, 1 p.m. EST. That will be on 2023 fundraising trends to prepare for the year ahead, led by Michelle O'Care from Grant Connect. Stephanie will leave a link to register for that in the chat. Thank you again, everyone. I'll leave it to Tony to say a final goodbye.
Oh, thank you, Kimberly. Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much, Kimberly, Stephanie, and Keela Labs. Thanks so much for hosting. And thanks to each of you for joining. Hope it was valuable. Hope it was fun and valuable. That's the intersection I like to work at. Valuable and fun.
Yes, we love it. Thanks so much, Tony. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.